Hello, I'm Dr. Garrett Boyer. Welcome to Gospel Minded. We're going to spend the next few minutes talking about concepts of psychology, themes related to behavioral health or emotional health, as these topics come out of the gospel reading for the week, just like we have for the past several weeks. And just like before, this isn't in any way a substitute for spiritual direction or counseling that you might be participating in. But as we know, the spiritual life, our psychological well-being, those two dimensions often cross paths. That's been the case for the last several weeks, and that's the case for this week's gospel reading as well. So we're picking up again from the Gospel of Mark, where we've been reading for the last several weeks. And this week it begins with chapter 1, verse 29. And it says this: "Immediately he left the synagogue and entered the house of Simon and Andrew with James and John. Now Simon's mother-in-law lay sick with a fever, and immediately they told him of her. And he came and took her by the hand and lifted her up, and the fever left her, and she served them. That evening at sundown they brought to him all who were sick or possessed with demons. And the whole city was gathered together about the door, and he healed many who were sick with various diseases, and cast out many demons. And he would not permit the demons to speak, because they knew him." Now the gospel goes on, but I just want to stop right there, because I think in those first few lines, the topic that I want to address, especially as it's related to psychology, is this concept of healing. Mark's gospel makes it so clear, and it's not just in Mark's gospel, it's the other gospels as well, that a hallmark of Jesus' public ministry was in fact healing. Sure, he preached, he taught, he worked various miracles, but this healing ministry of Jesus was such a highlight of his public ministry, and it's evident already now in this first chapter of the Gospel of Mark. And I think it's remarkable too to note that not only was Jesus healing physical infirmities, but the spiritual infirmities as well. And I can assert as a psychologist that our Lord's intercession and intervention also helps heal the mind. Now, it's interesting that this gospel comes up because in the field of psychology, health psychology is a fascinating domain in the field of psychology. And over the years, there's just been a lot of literature and a lot of research done on health psychology and this whole concept of the way we think about health and our own well-being. Sometimes it's not always good. There are in fact even disorders of a psychological nature where sometimes people will believe that they are sick, physically sick, have some kind of ailment of one kind or another, when in fact medical evidence suggests that that's not the case, and their illness is more of a result of the way they're thinking. We can call them somatic disorders or somatoform disorders. And I've seen it happen. It's real. But we're going to put that aside because that's not what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about the real sicknesses that people have, be it a chronic kind of illness or ailment that somebody wrestles with for a while. Perhaps it's a physical ailment, chronic pain. Maybe you're having a surgery or a procedure and there's a lengthy time of recovery afterwards. Or perhaps you've hurt yourself. These can be long-lasting conditions which do in fact impact our physical health. But when we are in pain, when we are sick, it impacts our mental health too. It impacts our emotional health as well. And believe it or not, there are ways that we can think about our sickness, our illness, which really has a an impact on the way that we're feeling, perhaps even physically. So I want to introduce you to this. I'm going to hold this up and I'm going to see if I can get it on your screen. I use this a lot with my patients. What we can see in this image is a triangle and 3 equal sides where thoughts, emotions, and behaviors are all listed there. And the point of this image is that it makes it clear that when we think and when we have feelings and emotions and the things that we do or things we don't do, they're all significant in our life and they all have an impact on one another. So things that we think in our head, it says here, what we think affects how we feel and how we act. Now moving down to the emotions, what we feel has an impact on what we think and what we do. And then over to the other side, our behaviors, the things that we do, the things that we do not do, our behaviors impact how we think and how we feel. And this is true all of the time, but I want to highlight that this is true when we're sick, when we're in pain, when we are recovering. To sort of make this more clear, I want to tell you about a story that I experienced personally. It was a few years ago. I was new to the military at that time, and I was doing exercise with a group, and they said, hey, we're going to do deadlifts with these big weights. And I'm not a lifter. I'm a skinny kind of guy. I do a lot of running. But the group said we're going to do some lifting. And I watched the guy in front of me pick up 300 pounds like it was nothing. And so I thought, well, I'm in decent shape. I should be able to do at least 220 pounds. And I bent down and I thought, I'm going to be just like Superman. And I picked that bar up and up I went, and my legs lifted off the ground and my back stayed pretty much right where it was at. And I knew immediately. I could hear it, I could feel it. I had never experienced a shooting pain like that before. And immediately in that moment, it was so bad. I remember thinking, this is going to change my life forever. And it was really quite life-changing at that time. I was in excruciating pain for the rest of the day, and then the next day, and the following day, and then the next week, and the next month. To be honest with you, it happened in March. I was not pain-free until late in September, 6 months. And even after that, I had periods where there were relapses of pain. Pretty moving stuff. When somebody is hurting, when somebody is sick, you think differently. Your emotions are a little bit different. The things that you do, the things that you do not do look differently. So for me, I hurt my back and it lasted for a very long time. So what were some of the thoughts that were going through my mind? Some of the thoughts were, I'm never going to be the same again. I'm hurt. I can't do what I always used to do. My life is changed forever now. Wow. So those are the thoughts that were swimming through my head quite a bit. How do you think those thoughts made me feel? I felt terrible. I felt like, wow, well now I'm useless. I think I'm in really bad shape, and I am, and if I can't do what I need to do, then what good am I? It made me feel just depressed, sad, miserable. And then how did that impact my behaviors? It impacted them a lot. I was thinking, man, I'm damaged. I'm feeling cruddy. Why bother doing anything? And I didn't. for a long time. It was so painful to move. I just thought, well, why bother? I'm just going to sit here and wallow and maybe hope that I can get better. When I was hurt, the way I thought, the way I felt, the things that I chose to do and not to do were impacted. Now, I just want to posit that if I had coached myself to think a little bit differently, to act a little bit differently and change my behaviors, may have made me feel a little bit differently. So instead of thinking, I'm broken, I'm not going to be able to do anything that I want ever again, understandably, that kind of thinking can make somebody feel pretty bad. If I would have instead thought, I don't like this, I am really hurting, and although I can't do everything that I want to do, there are still some things that I am able to do. And that is absolutely right. I wasn't completely incapacitated. Sure, I couldn't do everything that I had been doing and wanted to do, but there was still plenty that I was able to do. And then, in fact, as I look back on it now, did do. If I had been thinking that way earlier, that might have impacted the way I was feeling. So if my thoughts were instead, this isn't my favorite, man, I don't like this, but hey, there's still a lot that I've got going for me. There's still a lot I can do. It'll probably make me feel a little bit different. And if I'm feeling a little different, if I'm thinking a little different, what do you think my behaviors would look like? Would I be just laying around feeling miserable and not doing what I needed to do? No, I would probably have a little bit more motivation. So our thoughts, our emotions, our behaviors can really have a significant impact in what we are experiencing physically, when we're sick, when we're not well, when we're hurt, when we are recovering. Very relevant and useful to think about, because who gets sick? Who gets hurt? Who has injuries? Who has this stuff come up? We all do. It's part of life. Now, the Lord can heal us. He does. It's clear from the scripture. But with these sort of interventions, coaching ourselves to think differently, being conscientious of what we're choosing to do and not to do, can impact the way we feel, not only emotionally, but even physically as well. And then the last point I'll bring up is that after Jesus heals Simon's mother-in-law, she turns to service. Our health is a gift, spiritual, physical, emotional. Don't squander the gift that we have with our health. And when we're to a place where we're feeling like we can put that best foot forward, let's then live our lives for the purpose of helping others, helping them in their journey to well-being, physical, spiritual, psychological. I hope this is useful for you, and I know this is good material that I could talk about all day. But in the interest of time, I'm going to pause now, but I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you get something from this, and share this information with your friends as well. I hope to see you next time. Again, here at Gospel Minded, I'm Dr. Garrett Boyer. Take care.